Welcome to Policy on Demand. I'm Sindhu Blume.
And I'm Scott McCandless. It's the week of April 28th, and this is your Monday briefing. Congress is back in session, and today we're speaking with Rohit Kumar to set expectations for the upcoming 4-week work period.
But before we go to Rohit, there's been more talk recently about the U.S. position on Pillar 2 and the future of negotiations. Following the Inclusive Framework meeting in Cape Town a few weeks ago, we were able to speak with Will Morris earlier for his take. Let's go to that clip.
Yeah, thanks. And it's a good question. Look, there is a certain air of optimism around that there hasn't been for a while. And I think quite a lot of that comes down to the US going to Cape Town and announcing that it would stay in the negotiations and also announcing that it didn't want to get rid of Pillar 2. Really what it wants to do is to ensure that US businesses, the US fisc, is taken out of that. And that's on the basis, obviously, that GILTI is viewed probably as an equivalent regime. And one assumes some type of UTPR safe harbor as well. So there is that. There is also some noise coming out of Europe about the possibility of the European Union changing some of its rules. I'd just be cautious because I think one has to be. As I've said before, tax is really not in charge of this. Trade is in charge of this. Geopolitics are in charge of this. And there are a number of things which could blow it off course. So I think, better mood music than we've heard for a while. And the possibility of certainly a quote-unquote US-only solution. But we are quite a long way from the end game.
Thanks for that, Will. And now, turning to Rohit. Rohit, welcome.
Thanks for having me back.
So let's kick this off with a one-word answer to this question. Wednesday will mark day 100 of President Trump's second term. In one word, what is your assessment and what are your thoughts about the first 100 days?
I can't do it in one word. Everything all at once. Right? I mean, they have clearly decided, and they had 4 years to work this out, that they had to come out of the gate like fast, hot, do everything. In part because, and I think they learned this from the first term, like the first 2 years goes quickly. And there's always this existential risk when you have total control of government that at the midterm elections, something's going to flip against you. And I think they learned that lesson, and now they are just all go all the time, running into the courts, running into pushback on Capitol Hill, but they're just going to press every advantage until they run out of room. And I think we should expect this at least until the midterm elections, and perhaps, depending on how things go, for the next 3.5 years.
All right.
Rohit, turning to Congress with the upcoming work period they have ahead of them, what do you expect them to work on? And within that work period timeframe, what's a possible timetable look like?
This upcoming work period, this last week of April into May through the Memorial Day recess, this is all one big, beautiful bill all day, all the time, especially in the House, right? The House is clearly primed to go with the Speaker's stated goal of getting, the Speaker's stated goal is to get the bill to the President's desk by Memorial Day. I would take as a win the House passing a bill by Memorial Day. They have several committees. Remember, one big, beautiful bill. This is a multi-committee exercise. So I think as soon as this week, we'll start to see some of the easier committees start to mark up their titles. The kind of showstoppers or the potential showstoppers are Energy and Commerce. That's where the Medicaid savings sit, at least in the House. And the Ways and Means Committee, that's, of course, the tax title. That could be the week of the 12th of May. It would have to be the week of the 12th if they hope to be on the floor the week of the 19th to get in front of the Memorial Day recess. But there is clearly, and you see this in the press reporting, this tension that is as old as time between the leadership agenda and schedule, like go, 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 and the committee sense of like, yeah, this is hard, and we have some non-trivial constraints to operate under, and we're trying to figure out, is there any overlap in the several circles of the Venn diagram that meets the policy needs, meets the revenue needs, meets the political needs, can do it all in time, and members are prepared to vote in favor of the proposal. Like, I have been just as guilty of this as anybody. I spent a career in the leadership offices. I would episodically threaten, if you don't write the bill, I will write the bill. And I know just enough to be dangerous. I don't think they're doing that, but this tension is not unusual. It's not abnormal. It is just the way of the world. But I think what we ought to be paying attention to is, these markups, how smoothly they're going. And especially when the House starts releasing proposals, what are senators saying about it? I think people often forget about the rotunda contamination, perhaps. Energy and Commerce releases a Medicaid title. What are Senate Republicans saying about that, and how does that affect the willingness of House members to vote for those proposals? So that's a lot to be paying attention to over the next couple of weeks.
All right, and aside from this tension, what other hurdles are there to achieving the goals that are set out here?
I mean, the hurdles, especially in the House, are just political, right? They are not going to run into a rules-based constraint. Everything in the House is simple majority vote. This reconciliation tool is frankly an annoyance for the House. This is really a thing that helps the Senate get across the finish line without having to cross a 60-vote hurdle. So early days, the first couple weeks, I think was probably pretty smooth sailing. But when you get to the Medicaid piece and the tax title, that's where the rubber really hits the road. I think those are, and on tax in particular, they have a sort of a doubly challenging set of constraints here, which is they don't actually know how much room they have because their instruction is contingent upon the House committees, all the other committees hitting their savings targets. So they've got a little bit of a moving target. And then they have the additional constraint of the Senate Finance Committee has an entirely different instruction that is more forgiving, gives them more room to cut taxes, puts less pressure on revenue-raising offsets. And if I'm the Ways and Means Committee, I'm spending a lot of time thinking about which of these revenue raisers am I potentially making my members vote for, that the Senate is going to 86 on the back end of this transaction. My members will be unhappy that they were asked, even in committee, let alone on the floor, to vote for this nasty gram that ended up not making the final bill.
Rohit, with all this going on, where should companies focus, both in terms of milestones they might want to watch out for, as well as actions they might want to take?
Yeah, so I think milestones, the next real big milestone is, does the House pass the bill by the Memorial Day recess? Look, the notional calendar here is House action in May, Senate action in June. If they're really feeling pressure and really have done a good job of aligning the House and Senate on the front end, not completely, but substantially, maybe even bill to the president's desk, 4th of July recess. But failing that, August recess is, I think, kind of the backstop that most people are thinking about. And the X date, the debt limit X date, which is the real action forcing event here, not a political one, but there's a real consequence to going past it. That probably pushes them closer to the August recess in terms of when they feel like they have to act. But you got to walk before you can run. The House has got to go first. The Senate's got to go second. So that House action by Memorial Day will be an important milestone in the progress of the bill. What should companies be doing? I mean, the House is moving. It's not too late to talk to the House, but in a couple weeks, I think we're going to have House language, and that's not fully baked, but substantially baked. But depending on what we see there, it may at that point be like, all right, now it's time to go talk to the Senate to say, look, this is a good first cut. Here are some places where it can be improved. Those sorts of conversations. Because there is, for all the work they're going to try to do on the front end, and it is an admirable goal, it will be nearly impossible to get full alignment between the House and the Senate on the front end of this transaction. They have different baselines, they have different constraints, the deficit sensitivities are different between the two chambers, the willingness to cut spending is different between the two chambers. That's not going to be resolved ultimately until the White House shows up and has to kind of broker a compromise. And I don't see the White House doing that on all issues on the front end of this transaction. It would just be, I think it would be impossible to achieve. So they may want to, it's an admirable goal, but it's just not, in a practical sense, doable. So there will be room, even after the House acts, there will be room, not unlimited room, but some room for incremental improvements in the Senate. So keeping an eye on the House, but then immediately thinking about, okay, how's the Senate going to react to this?
Makes sense. Great. Thank you so much, Rohit, for your insights. Always appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. And for our viewers, trade issues continue to be top of mind, and you'll find a link in the description of this episode to an interview with Chris Desmond and Michelle Horton on dealing with the changes and challenges in the tariff front.
And in case you missed Scott's Week in Review, that also is linked in the description of this episode. Thank you, as always, for spending this time with us, and have a great week. Take care.